I really hate thinking about how much time parents spend on stickers, timeouts, other rewards, other punishments, when what's really important for them to know is that rewards and punishments aren't problem-solving strategies. All we're doing when we're using rewards and punishments is trying to modify the kid's frustration response. We are not doing anything remotely related to solving the problem that's causing it.
Welcome, everyone. This is Ekaterina with Trust Me Mom. And today I'm interviewing one of my personal heroes, Dr. Greene, the author of the Explosive Child book and other amazing works. Dr. Greene helped my family so much over the years when I struggled with my own child. And finally, I get to talk to him today and ask him about his amazing method and the overall paradigm shift. It's such a big concept that kids do well if they can, and many parents are still making same old mistakes thinking that, well, if I discipline them more or give them more stickers, they'll do better. So Dr. Greene, welcome to the show, and let's dive into your groundbreaking work in childhood psychology. All right, so tell us more about why kids do well if they can and why parents still make those mistakes and misjudge their children.
They still make those mistakes because they haven't read The Explosive Child yet. And that's a shame. I was just on a call with a mother yesterday who was in tears as she was remembering all the advice she had been given related to timeouts, and if her kid wouldn't stay in timeout and he wouldn't, locking him in his room. And if he tried to get out of his room, bolting the door, and being told that her kid, he was 4 at the time, was going to end up in prison someday. And these are not things that she was recalling with great fondness. Families really struggle until they find the right thing. And it's not been my experience that a sticker chart or a timeout is going to be the right thing. So here's why. There's something causing a kid's concerning behavior. Concerning behavior is just a frustration response. That's important for people to know, which means that there's something frustrating the kid. If all we do is try to modify the kid's concerning behavior, we never do anything about what's causing them frustration. And that's really where the action's at. Plus, the concerning behavior is late. It comes after the expectation that a kid is having difficulty meeting what they're frustrated about. What they're frustrated about is early. So instead of running around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to chase after behavior or wait for behavior to occur, we can be proactive and identify the expectations kids are having difficulty meeting that are causing their frustration responses. And as you know, but some of your listeners might not, those expectations are called unsolved problems. Something's getting in the kid's way. This kid would very much prefer to be doing well. I haven't come across an exception yet to the kids do well if they can mantra. And, if we wanted to rely on research to support the kids do well if they can mantra, we would just look at the massive amount of research that has accumulated over the last 40 to 50 years, telling us that what distinguishes kids with concerning behavior from those who don't really have concerning behavior is skills. Flexibility, adaptability, frustration tolerance, problem solving, emotion regulation. The skills that most of us take for granted, but that help us deal well with life's problems and frustrations. If the kid had those skills, they'd be doing well, because kids do well if they can. They're struggling with those skills. That's what the research has been telling us for a very long time. And quite frankly, as someone who was trained in the traditional method, it was when I learned about those skills that my thinking turned around too.
Yes. And let's talk about plan A, plan B, and plan C.
Well, you have three options as a parent for how to handle unmet expectations. You don't need these options if your kid is meeting an expectation. So if your kid is brushing their teeth as well and as often as you'd like them to before they go to bed at night, you don't need any of the three plans we're about to talk about because it's a met expectation, meaning it's not an unsolved problem. It's an unsolved problem if your kid is not reliably brushing their teeth before going to bed at night. And by the way, if they're still having difficulty brushing their teeth before going to bed at night, that's proof that whatever we've done so far to try to work on that didn't work. But on a more positive note, it's also proof that it's a very predictable unsolved problem, which means we don't have to try to solve that problem just as a kid is having difficulty brushing their teeth before going to bed at night. We can solve it proactively. Plan A is where you're solving that problem unilaterally. It's where the adult decides what's getting in the way for the kid on that expectation or any other, and the adult decides what the solution is. We don't do that in this model. We don't think it works very well. We're not allergic to plan A. We just don't see the point because there's plan B. Plan B is where you're solving the problem collaboratively. Exact same problem, better approach to solving it, because when you're solving problems collaboratively, you are involving the kid. And what we always say about the kid is, first of all, they have great ideas for solutions. But secondly, and even more important, your number one source of information on what's making it hard for a kid to meet a particular expectation is the kid. So often when us adults, this is plan A, are divining what's getting in the kid's way and divining what the solution should be, we miss the mark completely. When you're doing plan B, you're actually gathering information from the kid about what's making it hard for them to meet the expectation. And once you know that, you know what needs to be addressed. And you are then engaging the kid in coming up with a solution. There's really no downside to doing things this way. It's just not the way we've always done it. And then there's plan C. Plan C is where you're putting a particular expectation on hold, at least for now. I can think of a few reasons why we might do that. Reason number one, once you identify a kid's unsolved problems, there's going to be a lot of them, especially in kids who are quite behaviorally challenging. You're not going to be able to solve them all at once, so you're going to have to prioritize. That's one reason you would use plan C. You're putting the unsolved problem on hold, at least for now, because you've got bigger fish to fry. And if you try solving them all at once, you'll solve nothing. But another reason that you would use plan C is if you come to the conclusion that this expectation, wonderful though it might be, is out of range for your kid at this point in their development, for whatever reason. That's a good reason to put an expectation on hold. Because if you put an expectation on a kid that you know they can't meet, you're going to cause concerning behavior, the frustration response, and all that goes along with it. And all that goes along with it isn't going to get you anywhere when it comes to solving the problem that caused the behavior in the first place. So that's huge, right? I really hate thinking about how much time parents spend on stickers, timeouts, other rewards, other punishments, when what's really important for them to know is that rewards and punishments aren't problem-solving strategies. All we're doing when we're using rewards and punishments is trying to modify the kid's frustration response. We are not doing anything remotely related to solving the problem that's causing it. And that's huge.
Yes, definitely. So now with this new environment, new beautiful background, let's switch to my next question. And actually, you touched on it a little bit about meeting expectation. And a lot of parents in my network, in my audience, have kids with autism, other neurodivergent conditions, all so-called challenging behaviors and conditions. And for these kids, indeed, if you compare them to the norm, even basic things could be more difficult for them. So can we talk a little bit more about what it means to apply all these strategies to your kid and stop judging yourself against the quote unquote norm, your relatives' kids, because your child is completely unique and different?
Well, I think you just said it for me. I don't worry about norms. I worry about individual kids. I don't worry about comparing. I worry about what this kid can do at this point in their development. And a term I've been talking a lot about lately, especially in a book that I'm finishing, is developmental variability. Developmental variability refers to the fact that in every realm, every single realm, there are individual differences. And the art of parenting is to figure out how your child is an individual and how to, and this is another term, another expression I've been using a lot lately, how you can meet your kid where they're at. If you're comparing your kid to somebody else's kid, you're not meeting your kid where they're at. This life, the definition of good parenting is meeting your kid where they're at. And one thing I'll say about kids, they're pretty good at letting you know if you're not meeting them where they're at. And isn't this fascinating? A kid's frustration response, whatever it is, and yes, there's more dangerous frustration responses and there's milder frustration responses, but a frustration response is a frustration response. And they all communicate that somehow we are not meeting that kid where they're at. And we need to start trying to do that. And why would we not be meeting it? Why can another third grader do it and mine can't? Developmental variability. But for a very long time, we've been attributing the fact that a kid can't meet an expectation to poor effort, poor motivation. And that has what has led us into this rabbit hole of trying to incentivize kids to meet expectations. No, truth is, a kid's frustration response is extraordinarily valuable. Non-compliance is valuable, right? It tells us something. You don't want to miss that. It tells you your kid is having difficulty meeting this expectation, and somehow you're having difficulty meeting your kid where they're at. We got some figuring out to do. But the last thing we'd want to do is squash the frustration response, because that's how the kid is communicating. Somehow we are missing each other. That's huge.
Definitely. Can you give us a few scripts? I know you have a few phrases that could be very helpful for parents.
Well, the biggest scripts you've heard a bunch of them now. Meeting kids where they're at is huge. Kids do all if they can is huge. Developmental variability is huge. That's not, kids do all if they can is original, but meeting kids where they're at is not, and developmental variability is not original. You'll find that phraseology in lots of different places. The biggest phraseology of the model relates to the 3 steps that are involved in solving a problem collaboratively. The first step's called the empathy step. It's where we're gathering information from the kid about what's making it hard for them to meet a particular expectation. As I always tell people, be prepared for surprises in the empathy step. When you discover that what you thought was getting in the kid's way is not what's getting in the kid's way. Huge. Next step is the define adult concerns step. This is where the adult is entering their concern into consideration. The same concern that might previously have led them into plan A is now leading them into plan B. Same concern, completely different approach to getting it addressed. And the third step is the invitation. That's where kid and caregiver are collaborating on a solution together, but a solution that must address the concerns of both parties, or it's not going to work. It's never worked in world history. It's not going to work between parents and kids either. We know from world history and in my work with parents that power causes conflict. And while you might get a brief thrill from power because your kid might have complied, it's not going to last because power never does. Collaboration brings people together. I have much more faith in solutions that are arrived at collaboratively than in solutions that are arrived at through use of power.
Yes, and I know you have some phrases such as, I noticed you have difficulty with such and such. What's up? So can
Okay.
you share a few of those?
That's the way you get the empathy step started, with an introduction, right? The beginning of the define adult concern step is, the thing is, or my concern is, something kind of neutral, so the kid doesn't think you're dismissing or disregarding their concern. And the words that kick off the invitation are, I wonder if there's a way. And generically what you're saying, I wonder if there's a way to address your concern and also address my concern. You just want to be specific about what those concerns are. That's the language of solving problems together. It's not that complicated. It's actually not that hard. And it works a whole lot better than thinking a reward or a punishment is going to solve anything.
Yes. So what I found useful and very helpful indeed, those phrases with identifying the problem and saying, I notice you have difficulty with so and so, what's up? And I know you have a lot. Definitely, people should check the book. And we probably need to wrap up this conversation. I know you're on a short, kind of on a tight schedule today. I want to give you an opportunity to address anything that I haven't answered you yet, and maybe tell about your upcoming book, about your amazing movement. You're working with many schools, many organizations. And before we jump into it, any other helpful phrases for parents with, I noticed you have difficulty with this, what's up? Any other help for us how to carry a conversation with the child?
I think one of the most important single words of the model is ask. If your child is struggling with something, ask them what's getting in their way, what's making it hard for them. And another very important word of the model is listen. No point in asking if you're not going to listen. I think of listening as the purest form of empathy. Listening is where people come together. Listening is where communication is enhanced. It's where relationships are enhanced. We're not going to solve anything. Oh, this is a societal message, I guess. We're not going to solve anything unless we're listening to each other. That's not blaming. That's not shaming. That's let's put our heads together and come up with a solution to what's getting in the way for both of us. If people want more information, they should go to the Lives in the Balance website, lives, L-I-V-E-S, in the balance.org. But that's where they'll also find all of our advocacy efforts. We are very involved legislatively because while a lot of parents are primarily interested in the model because we have to improve their lives first, there's a lot of kids who are being very poorly treated out there. And we've got to do something about that too. The name of the new book, it's not out yet, but it'll be out in January or February. That's up for discussion, is The Kids Who Aren't Okay. And it's how schools can be as responsive as possible to what's walking in the door. Because the research tells us, while most kids are still doing okay, more than ever are not. We are seeing very high rates of depression and anxiety and chronic school absenteeism and suicidality and concerning behavior in schools these days. Those are all frustration responses too. Those frustration responses tell us all is not well. And we need to take a closer look at that and make sure we're being responsive to what's walking in the door.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for your wonderful work.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to do this, and it was very nice talking with you.